Let's talk about buying enterprise software. It used to be pretty straightforward, right? You'd look at the price, figure out how many seats you needed, and that was pretty much it. Well, with AI, that entire rulebook has been thrown out the window. The game has totally changed. So today, we're going to break down the new rules of AI pricing and arm you with everything you need to know to make a smart buy.
Okay, just look at the difference here. On one hand, you had the old way. Simple, per seat, and best of all, predictable. You knew exactly what your bill was going to be. Now, welcome to the new way. It's complex, it's supposedly value-based, which sounds good, but what does that even mean? And the big one, it's variable. Your costs can go up and down, and that can be pretty scary if you don't know what you're getting into.
And just in case you think this is some fringe thing, get this. A whopping 92.4% of AI companies are using these new, complex, hybrid pricing models. So this isn't something you can avoid. This is the new reality. Understanding this world is absolutely essential if you want to avoid overpaying or, even worse, getting locked into a deal that just doesn't work for you.
All right, so let's dive in and really understand what's going on here. We're going to pull back the curtain on why AI pricing had to become so different. Once you get the why, the what makes a whole lot more sense.
Okay, this right here, this is the key. The whole reason everything changed. It's called variable compute cost. With old-school software, it didn't really cost the vendor any more money if one person used it 10 times or 1,000 times. But with AI, every single time you ask it a question or generate an image or run a task, it costs the vendor real money for the computing power. It's like a taxi meter that's constantly running in the background. That's why a simple flat fee just doesn't work anymore.
So, how are vendors dealing with this? Well, they've basically created a whole menu of pricing parts that they mix and match. You'll see some familiar stuff like a base subscription fee or a per-user cost. But the real game changers are the new kids on the block. Usage-based pricing, where you pay for what you actually use, and outcome-based, where you pay for the results you get. As a buyer, your job is to figure out exactly what combination they're offering and what it means for your final bill. So we've seen the ingredients, now let's look at the actual recipes. We're going to decode the 5 big pricing models that are popping up everywhere. Think of this as your field guide for when you're out there talking to vendors.
So here's how it breaks down. You can pay for raw resources, kind of like an electricity bill for the AI's brainpower. Or you can go with an agent-based model, which is like paying a salary for a digital employee. Then you have usage-based interactions, where you're paying for every little task, like an API call. And then you get to the really interesting ones, outcome-based models. You either pay when a specific job gets done, or, and this is the holy grail for some, you only pay when it delivers actual financial results, like boosting your revenue.
So which of these is the best? Well, that's the tricky part. There is no best one. It all depends on your needs. Each one comes with its own set of pros and cons, and you, the buyer, really need to think through these trade-offs carefully.
Let's look at this. It's a classic tug-of-war. On one side, you've got usage-based models. You love the flexibility, you only pay for what you use. But your finance department, they're going to hate the unpredictability. It's a nightmare to budget for. Then you have agent-based models. Predictability. It's easy to budget, just like an employee's salary. But are you paying for an agent that's just sitting around doing nothing? And then there's outcome-based. The dream, right? Perfect alignment. You only pay for real value. The problem? Actually defining and agreeing on what an outcome is can be incredibly difficult. And if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, defining outcomes sounds really hard, well, you are not alone. Look at this. Nearly half of B2B buyers say that's their #1 barrier. And right behind it, concern about cost predictability. These are the things that keep buyers like you up at night. So yeah, your concerns are completely valid.
And here's a real-world horror story of what happens when pricing gets it wrong. In this case, a vendor was charging the same price for every single interaction. So a quick 2-second question cost the customer the exact same as a super complex 5-minute task. It's like going to a cafe and paying the same price for a shot of espresso as you would for a full 3-course meal. It makes no sense. The price was totally disconnected from the value, and you can bet customers were not happy.
Okay, enough about the problems and the challenges. Let's talk about the solution. How do you navigate this? This next part is your playbook. This is what you can use to take control of the conversation with vendors and make sure you get a deal that actually makes sense for you.
These are your new best friends. You need to ask every single vendor these questions. Seriously, write them down. How are you going to protect us from a surprise $1 million bill? That's a big one. And notice the word collaboratively. How do we define an outcome together?
And you have to ask about what happens when you scale. But maybe my favorite one is about disputes. You need to know what the process is when, not if, you disagree on whether an outcome was actually achieved. A vendor's answer to these questions will tell you everything you need to know.
And before you sign on that dotted line, there's one last reality check: the build versus buy dilemma. You might be tempted to think, heck, we can just build this ourselves and avoid all this pricing nonsense. But are you really thinking about the hidden costs? We're talking massive development costs, your IT team becoming a permanent bottleneck, and the huge risks around security and compliance. When you add all that up, you might find that buying is the much smarter and cheaper option in the long run.
So at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one simple question. It's the most important question you can ask yourself in this whole process. Are you buying a tool, or are you buying a result? Because your answer changes everything. It changes how you evaluate price, how you talk to vendors, and ultimately how you'll measure success. So think about that. The next time you go to buy AI, don't just ask about the price tag on the tool. Ask about the price of the result.